and his fleet, he had frequent and certain intelligence of their destination; but having so often escaped their vigilance, he became rather too secure and fearless. It happened, however, that while he lay off Cape Lopez, the Swallow had information of his being in that place, and made towards him. Upon the appearance of a sail, one of Robert's ships was sent to chase and take her. The pilot of the Swallow, seeing her coming, manoeuvred his vessel so well that, though he fled at her approach, in order to draw her out of the reach of her associates, yet he at his own time allowed her to overtake the man of war. Upon her coming up to the Swallow, the pirate hoisted the black flag and fired upon her. But how greatly were her crew astonished when they saw that they had to contend with a man of war! And seeing that all resistance was vain, they cried out for quarter, which was granted, and they were made prisoners, having 10 men killed and 20 wounded, without the loss or hurt of one of the king's men. On the 10th, in the morning, the men of war bore away to round the cape. Robert's crew, discerning their masts over the land, went down into the cabin to acquaint him of it, he being then at breakfast with his new guest, Captain Hill, on a savoury dish of salmagundy, and some of his own beer. He took no notice of it, and his men almost as little, some saying she was a Portuguese ship, others a French slave ship. But the major part swore it was the French Ranger returning, and they were merrily debating for some time on the manner of reception, whether they should salute her or not. But as the Swallow approached nearer, things appeared plainer, and though they who showed any apprehension of danger were stigmatized in the name of cowards, yet some of them, now undeceived, declared it to Roberts, especially one Armstrong, who had deserted from that ship and knew her well. These Roberts swore at as cowards, who meant to dishearten the men, asking them, if it were so, whether they were afraid to fight or not. In short, he hardly refrained from blows. What his own apprehensions were, till she hauled up her ports and hoisted her proper colours, is uncertain; but then, being perfectly convinced, he slipped his cable, got under sail, ordered his men to arms without any show of timidity, dropping a first-rate oath that it was a bite, but at the same time resolved, like a gallant rogue, to get clear or die. There was one Armstrong, as was just mentioned, a deserter from the Swallow, of whom they inquired concerning the trim and sailing of that ship. He told them she sailed best upon the wind, and therefore, if they designed to leave her, they should go before it. The danger was imminent, and the time very short, to consult about means to extricate himself. His resolution in this strait was as follows: to pass close to the Swallow with all their sails, and receive her broadside before they returned a shot. If disabled by this, or if they could not depend on sailing, then to run on shore at the point, and every one to shift for himself among the negroes, or failing these, to board and blow up together, for he saw that the greatest part of his men were drunk, passively courageous, and unfit for service. Roberts himself made a gallant figure at the time of the engagement, being dressed in a rich crimson damask waistcoat and breeches, a red feather in his hat, a gold chain round his neck, with a diamond cross hanging to it, a sword in his hand, and 2 pairs of pistols hanging at the end of a silk sling flung over his shoulders, according to the custom of the pirates. He is said to have given his orders with boldness and spirit. Coming, according to what he had proposed, close to the man of war, he received her fire, and then hoisted his black flag and returned it, shooting away from her with all the sail he could pack. And had he taken Armstrong's advice to have gone before the wind, he had probably escaped. But keeping his tracks down, either by the wind's shifting or ill steerage, or both, he was taken aback with his sails, and the Swallow came a second time very nigh to him. He had now, perhaps, finished the fight very desperately, if Death, who took a swift passage in a grape shot, had not interposed, and struck him directly on the throat. He settled himself on the tackles of a gun, which one Stevenson, from the helm observing, ran to his assistance, and not perceiving him wounded, swore at him, and bade him to stand up and fight like a man. But when he found his mistake, and that his captain was certainly dead, he burst into tears, and wished the next shot might be his portion. They presently threw him overboard, with his arms and ornaments on, according to his repeated request in his lifetime. This extraordinary man and daring pirate was tall, of dark complexion, about 40 years of age, and born in Pembrokeshire. His parents were honest and respectable, and his natural activity, courage, and invention were superior to his education. At a very early period, he, in drinking, would imprecate vengeance upon the head of him who ever lived to wear a halter. He went willingly into the pirate service, and served 3 years as a second man. It was not for want of employment, but from a roving, wild, and boisterous turn of mind. It was his usual declaration that, in an honest service, there are commonly low wages and hard labour; in this, plenty, satiety, pleasure, and ease, liberty and power; and who would not balance creditor on this side, when all the hazard that is run for it at worst is only a sour look or two at choking? No, a merry life and a short one shall be my motto. But it was one favourable trait in his character, that he never forced any man into the pirate service. The prisoners were strictly guarded while on board, and being conveyed to Cape Coast Castle, they underwent a long and solemn trial. The generality of them remained daring and impenitent for some time; but, when they found themselves confined within a castle, and their fate drawing near, they changed their course, and became serious, penitent, and fervent in their devotions. Though the judges found no small difficulty in explaining the law, and different acts of Parliament, yet the facts were so numerous and flagrant which were proved against them, that there was no difficulty in bringing a verdict of guilty. Chapter 7.